We're ready? Okay. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Here.
Senator French
Here.
was here. Senator Hicks.
Present.
Senator Ide.
Here.
Senator Kolb.
Present.
Chairman Steinmetz.
We're here. All of us are here. All right. We are going to change the order of our committee meeting just a little bit because we have so many people here to testify on Senate File 126. We will do barbering and cosmetology practice amendments first. We do have people online, and so we have a lot of folks in the room and we have a lot of people online. And in order to accommodate everyone, we would like to limit testimony. Please keep it brief. Let us know your name, where you're from, who you're representing, and we'll keep the testimony brief. We might go over that again before we start that. But starting out, we will have the good Senator Ide come forward and present his bill to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair,
All right.
members of the committee. I'm Bob Ide, bringing this bill here. Y'all know me, those that don't, in the audience. So I didn't mean to create a firestorm here. I was just, this bill is something that occupational licensing in particular, I guess, I'll start there, is an area that just with what happened in the pandemic the last few years, it gave a lot of the public health authorities reason to shut a lot of businesses down, and threaten to take their license if they didn't comply. So that, to a certain degree, that's what got me thinking on this bill. And then the rest of it is just trying to, create less barriers to entry for, people to get into a workforce without going into a lot of debt. And I know that I didn't make a lot of friends with this, and we have made some amendments to this bill after we've heard from a lot of people around the state regarding this bill. Or this amendment to the cosmetology bill essentially is what it is. So Senator Steinmetz, I guess I'll ask a question. Do we want to read in the amendment first, or do you want me just to go over the bill first? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ide, for that. What I'd like you to do is take us through your bill and give us where the amendment would affect it as you go through the bill.
Okay.
And explain the bill to us, and then we'll see what we've got left. Obviously, we won't move the amendment until we move the bill if the committee chooses to. But that way, the public will have heard what your amendments are, and they'll know what is left in the bill, so that when they comment, they'll know what you're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Madam Chair. So essentially, this is Senate File 126, and it's barbering and cosmetology practice amendments. And, the bill relates to occupations and professions providing exemptions from the Wyoming Cosmetology Act and barber licensing requirements for rendering of specific services, providing definitions, amending licensure requirements for barbers, cosmetologists, hairstylists, estheticians, nail technologists, and manicurists, amending definitions and providing for effective dates. So that's essentially what the bill is outlined here. The language that was added to this is on page 1, that line 11, that the practice of blow drying styling is defined by statute 3312-120. The practice of natural hair braiding is defined by WS 3312-120. So that was language that was added language that was deleted was on page 2, lines 12 or 13 and 14. Essentially what that did was on barbering that it didn't require, let's see, what was taken out of there has education equivalent to the completion of second year in high school. So basically that was deleted and just made, the age requirement 17 years old. The line 17, 18, 19, that language was added and changed. It used to be 1,200 hours, and that was lowered to 600 hours. Language on page 4, line 6 and 7, added language there, including where it says and includes hairstyling, aesthetics, manicuring, and nail technology. And, and if everybody in here, there's quite a bit in this page 4 on these additions. So I'll jump right over to page 5. And this is where we made an amendment, I think, that had a lot of people concerned about. So if you look on page 5, lines 4 through 14, that was deleted. And essentially that was the practice of eyelash extension application. And so that was completely removed from this bill. Page 6 is a lot of the practice of natural hair braiding. That's what is on page 6. That was all additional language. Page 7 was the practice of threading, and that was all added to this here, and styling device, it defined as styling device on 11 through 13 there. So there again on, if you go to page 8, we deleted, some wording was added on line 3 where it says have met the following. So we removed the following and just took that back out of there. That was added language and that was removed. There was a few little delete strike at the end of 4 there, as you can see on that amendment. And okay, then if lines 6 through 17 were deleted as well. That whole section right there, 6 through 17, where it took all of the cosmetology hourly changes completely out of there. And I think that's where a lot of the trouble with the people in the industry didn't like a lot of that, lowering those hours. And my intent of this bill was not to disrupt that. I was just, more than anything, trying to make it easier for people to get into this business without having to have a lot more hours than a lot of other states have. And essentially, yeah, so on page 9, there's a few more deletions right there, lines 9 and 10, where it took out the practice of eyelash extension application was deleted. And then all that did was kind of move up those Romanet numbers to match, taking that paragraph out of there. So that's kind of effectively what the bill started with and how it ended up with the amendments. And I'd like to just go into a few talking points here of why some of this happened and why we thought it might be a good bill for industry and people trying to get into this profession. First
Senator
off,
Hyde, before you do that,
Oh, yes.
okay, so on page 1, I think we might have missed this. On page 1, line 5, after barbers, delete the balance of the line. So it'd be cosmetologists, hairstylists, estheticians, and nail technologists or manicurists. So we're deleting them out of the bill. Is that correct, Senator Hyde?
let's see. Let me see if I have that amendment here on page 1.
Page 1, line 5 and 6, the deletions.
That is
there.
correct. You're correct.
So
Yes.
then we're only talking about amending licensure requirements for barbers and amending definitions. And so now you are proposing to take all of those sections out. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Now go on right ahead.
So here's a little bit of the sales pitch why I think maybe some of the people in the room that don't like this might like it better. That with those amendments, I think that hopefully will help. And just a few talking points here. New York, Wyoming should be freer than New York, in my opinion. And today, with respect to these licensing laws, we're not. This bill will change that. Licensing is designed to protect public safety, but when licensing laws go beyond that need, they need to be reformed. This bill, to reduce unnecessary licensing for important jobs of our state, my goal here is more opportunities, higher employment, and less debt. Schools, beauty professionals, and the market should be deciding what training is needed to work in this industry, not the government. I'm going to offer an amendment, which I've already done. Some of those concerns have been raised, so I hope that helps with everybody listening here tonight. The state requires 1,000 hours of minimum to work as a barber, 6.5 times the training we require to work as an EMT in Wyoming. It's not right for the citizens who want to work as barbers. They should be earning a living, not a license. This bill reduces the hours of government-required training for barbering to 600 hours. It protects the public without imposing unnecessary barriers, including extra training, testing, and cost to work. I'll note that these hours are just the minimum set by the state. Nothing in this bill precludes schools and barbershops from requiring more if there is demand for it. It follows best practices for other states. Florida requires 602 hours of training, and if you can believe it, New York only requires 291 hours of training. When we're regulating more than New York, I think that's something that we really don't want to do. To wrap this thing up, the least restrictive regulation that still achieves its purpose is the right regulation. This bill helps to right-size licensing here and gives our beauty professionals more control of their careers. I support these reforms and ask you to support them too. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ide. Any questions for Senator Ide? All right, seeing none, if you'd like to join us at the dais, you're
Okay.
welcome to. And we'll see if there's any agency testimony. I see the community colleges here. Is there any agency testimony on this bill? Welcome to the Ed Committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I am Sandy Caldwell, Executive Director of the Wyoming Community College Commission, State of Wyoming. And I have with me Dr. Ben Moritz. He is the Deputy Director, and he is also the Chief Academic and Student Services Officer. So works on the academic programs at all of the colleges as those programs come forward to the commission for program approval. We do have some concerns with this bill. We were very happy to hear some of the potential amendments that you were discussing. The thing that we really wanted to make sure that there was an awareness is there are 2 of the community colleges that offer cosmetology programs, including the barbering. That is Eastern Wyoming College and Central Wyoming College. And I do know later on when you get to the public comments, we have faculty, from some of those colleges, a couple of those 2 colleges, I believe, to address some of these points. One of the components that we're very concerned about is how this impacts their overall program, the programs that are approved, the programs that then are qualified under their Higher Learning Commission accreditation. We always want to make sure that we're looking at that because that also impacts federal student aid. So when you start to impact the total number of hours, you do also impact the length of the program and then how much the student then qualifies for individual financial aid. There are some other components to that. I will just mention that that is not only for the community colleges. That would be for any training institution that is permitted to provide student financial aid for their students. They have to still qualify under that. So we would have to look at what the impacts would be. We would have to work more directly with those faculty in the programs to find out how that would impact the length of the program, what that might do in terms of the credentials that the colleges are able to award under that. So it's something we want to make sure that we stay informed of, and we can make sure that we're providing you good information about that. So there's some maybe some unintended consequences, as you heard the good senator mention, that we want to make sure that we're aware of as things change. With that, I don't know if I missed something, Dr. Moritz?
Okay, all right, any questions, committee questions? I do have one question. Ms. Caldwell, one of the reasons I signed on to this bill is I thought it might make it so we'd see more students, more possibly stay-at-home moms who were looking for a career, things like that, and it might remove a barrier for them to have to be, have that many hours before they can actually be employed or start their own business or something like that, and be able to enter the workforce. And so could you answer that question for me, why that isn't the case, I guess?
Madam Chair, Senator Steinmetz, I can try to answer that. I will say, and I don't want to speak certainly for the Board of Cosmetology, they are here, but I think the colleges and probably any of the training providers want to make sure that they're removing as many barriers as possible. However, they also want to make sure that the programs are meeting the standards of care. You have a lot of safety and health requirements, particularly related to cosmetology. When it comes to the eyes, the scalp, the skin, infectious diseases, and I'm going to leave that to smarter people than me to give you more information about that. One thing I will share that is important to recognize is that some of the states where you've seen a lower training hours, they actually didn't lower the training hours, and they require an apprenticeship for those training hours. So they have so much that has to be within the institution, and so many that has to be under a practitioner. So they can't go and operate independently in most of these. I don't have all of them off the top of my head, so I want to mention that. So I think that one of the ways that the colleges in particular have managed that is they do have stackable certificates. So the colleges work very carefully, and this is something that all of the colleges do in their various programs, to get to the final, maybe associate degree level program. There may be a sequence of certificates along the way where a student can get the first level certificate and they can start to work in that, and then they get the next level certificate. And cosmetology is one of those areas that does have the ability for additions, specializations, but each one of those specializations has hours associated to it for a reason. And I know that the faculty that are on in the Board of Cosmetology would answer those specifics much more eloquently than I could.
All right, okay, any further questions, committee? Senator Kolb, jump right in.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't know much about this. I'm learning as I go, but you said your program could be affected negatively by the time it takes to complete your course. How long would it take you to change your program, let's say if this did happen, or would that cause other complications that you can't deal with?
Madam Chair, Senator Kolb, we would have to look to see what finally happens. As it stands now, without the amendments, it would be quite significant. We would have to take that, the faculty would have to then work on it, because there is a total number of hours that is going to hit each one of the benchmarks eligible for them for a credential, what's going to be certified or allowed under their accrediting body as a certificate. They still have to meet the requirements for what's going to be required in a degree program. So we're moving hours, and I don't know how this would shake out, so I don't want to say this is absolutely how it would happen. But if you're reducing hours in a content area, those hours have to be made up in another way, because you still have to get to the total number of hours for a degree or a credential. So it doesn't have that effect in terms of the total time. They still have to meet the requirements of a degree program. If we were to reduce that to a smaller one, then it becomes into whether or not it's even going to qualify for a degree or a certificate. It will certainly impact the amount of financial aid, which we know, particularly for working parents, that's a significant barrier for them. They do need that aid to make sure they can get through.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
We'll see if the board would come up next and give us your input. Welcome to the Ag Committee. Please, state your name.
Madam Chair
Who
and
you're
committee,
with, all right.
I am, my name is Jelaine Ellis. I am from Cheyenne. I have served on the Wyoming Board of Cosmetology for the past 9 years. I've also served on the National Board of Cosmetology for 5. And my response was given before all of the amendments were made, so I'm going to try and skip over some.
Okay.
I would like to thank you all for your time today. I would also like to note that neither the Board of Barbers or the Board of Cosmetology was contacted regarding this bill or had any part in drafting of this bill. We believe that if change within our statutes need to be addressed, that both boards should have the opportunity to be involved in that discussion. We have heard from supporters that this bill, that they believe hours in Wyoming are amongst the highest, but our hours be in the line with the majority of the states. We also don't understand why this industry is being targeted. This is a legitimate professional career path for many Wyoming citizens. Ultimately, the area of most concern with the bill is the health and safety of the public, concerning lowering of hours and deregulation. Again, that was taken out. Right. Some of the top concerns in this area would be spread of contagious diseases. This could include many things from the common cold, influenzas, and COVID, but could also include herpes, hepatitis, and MRSA. Injury to a client, such as chemical burns, burns from waxing, aesthetic implements, straight razors. These are all basic things that can happen in a salon or barbershop, but training hours educate licensees on infection control to reduce the risk and spread of contagious diseases, and how to safely use, clean, and disinfect implements that can cause injury. And lastly, how to properly treat blood exposure to reduce the risk of infection. There are also many unseen concerns when we are talking about unlicensed practice. If a service is not regulated, then they would not have to work within a licensed facility. This means that anyone could offer services anywhere. We could have people offering services on social media. An appointment would be made online, and then the public would be given an address. What situation would citizens be walking into, and what recourse would they have if anything went wrong? We believe through education, licensure, salon, and barbershop inspections that we are able to work with the licensees to promote health and safety for the public.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the committee? Questions? Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your comments there. That's the first thing you said was, the board wasn't contacted before this legislation, and I appreciate that comment. I'm new. It's probably something that I should have approached. We talked to a lot of people outside of specifically the Wyoming board, and thought that it was something that would be more positive to get more young people in without having to borrow a lot of money to get into the business and have a profession that didn't take as long and arduous hours. So anyway, thank you for that comment, and I'll learn in the future that I need to talk to more of the people that are involved. So thank you for that comment.
All right, thank you, Senator Ide. Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, this is not my field, you know. Well, as a farmer, I do have a field. Oh, man. Okay, I'll start over here. Isn't there room for, I mean, somebody that learns it on their own and gets started, maybe a friend helps them, and somebody that goes through the classes, and I mean, isn't there room for both out there? The one that goes through the classes can hang up that plaque or whatever, saying I'm a certified cosmetologist, and the other one does not have that opportunity to do that. So as a consumer, you can look and say, oh, well, I want to go to the one that's has all these hours and has got the certificate and blah, blah, blah. Or, no, I don't have the money. They charge maybe a little more. I'm going to go to my friend's friend. See where I'm going with this? Is there room for both? I mean, thank you.
Madam Chair? So I call them TikTok certifications. There's no, if something goes wrong with those people who aren't licensed, who do they go to? If there's no inspections to make sure that they are doing proper sanitation and cleaning and keeping the public safe, yes, you can go to somebody who has a TikTok certification. And if something goes wrong, you can't come back on the state board. You can't, we have nothing. We can't support them. We can't support the licensee. Correct?
All right, thank you. All right, any further testimony? Go ahead. State your name and who you're
I'm
with.
Sharon Bennett. I'm the director of the Board of Cosmetology. I also am here representing the Board of Barbers. And Madam Chairman, is it okay if I ask you guys a question?
It's unusual, but we can try to answer a question.
My question is on what's actually left of this bill.
Okay.
So is everything cosmetology related gone? Is it just barbering now?
I will let Senator Ide answer that if he would be so obliged.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll pass the buck back to you if I could, but I'll try to hit that one. We just kind of got this amendment done here, and the way, let's go, have you seen the bill, or do you have a copy of it? in
The
front of you?
original bill, yes.
Yeah, let me get it here. Let's see, so that main, let me go to that amendment there.
We could go through it and read it completely in if you have the bill in front of you, if that would help you.
And we tried to go through it. I
All right,
apologize.
okay. Why don't we go through that? I'll tell you where the major changes are, if that would be all right, Senator Ide.
Sure.
All right. So on page 1, line 5, after barbers, we're deleting cosmetologists, hairstylists, estheticians, and nail technologists or manicurists. There are no changes on page 2 or 3, or 4, but on page 5, we're deleting all of line 4 through 14. There's some renumbering that is going on throughout the bill. Then on page 7, we are deleting lines 18 through 21, it says. Page 7, lines 18 through 21. page 8, lines 1 through 17. That's all of the hours on page 8. Are you following with me?
I'm trying, thank you.
All right. And then page 9, lines 9 and 10. So that takes care of everybody except for the barbers. It looks like they would have 600 hours on page 3. We would have on page 4 the practice of blow dry styling that would remain in the bill. And on page 5, the practice of makeup application would remain in the bill. And on page 6, the practice of natural hair braiding would remain in the bill. And then on page 7, the practice of threading would remain in the bill. So that is what remains of the bill. I think we have heard the good sponsor of the bill that would be open to working with you should the bill pass, and you have further thoughts on what you might like to see in the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
If the amendment passes, that is the proposed amendment. And obviously, we haven't even moved the bill yet, so we're just in public testimony. But for your clarification, that is what the proposed amendment is.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Madam Chairman, I believe that there are a lot of people that would like to voice in on this. Is it possible that they have their opportunity to do so, and myself and the board member would stand for questions afterward if need be?
Yes, that would be perfectly appropriate. I will ask that we limit our public comment to 1 minute. We have 2 other bills besides this tonight, and it's already 6:30, so our brains don't work quite as well as they once did when we were younger. But so yes, that would be fine if you'd like to yield your time, and we'll go ahead and let all of the people in the room comment first, and then we'll go to online. I'd like to be finished with this by 5 after 7. So if we could keep that in mind and try to limit comments and just let us know quickly whether you're for or against and why. All right. And I do see that the good Senator Ellis is here. We usually let legislators come up first if they would like to. No comments from Senator Ellis. All right. All right. So come on up, whoever would like to be next in the room and testify.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Catherine Wilkinson, and you know me in my professional capacity as a lobbyist, but this evening I'm here speaking to you as an individual and as a client of my esthetician who is sitting behind us, and you will hear from her too. And I am actually in opposition to the bill, but support of the amendment. It's very important to me that my esthetician is licensed. I take my lash extension the application that she does every couple of weeks when I see her very seriously. And it is very important to me as a consumer, but more importantly to those that might not know that they need to look for that plaque, that they need to know that is, there's a lot of serious diseases that can come from that. I've also cleared my lashes with my optometrist in a personal discussion with him to be sure that application was correct, and she received flying colors. So I'm just here in opposition to the bill, and I would actually urge you to support that amendment, but to think about it. It is very important to me and to all of her other clients that she does remain licensed, and that it's not undervaluing their license by requiring other folks that don't get the same education to do these applications. So with that,
All right.
thank you.
Questions, committee? Questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Who's next? Anybody else in the room like to testify on this bill? Hi, welcome. State your name and who you're representing today.
My name is Aubrey Salazar. I am a business owner. I've been an esthetician for 22 years.
I've owned an eyelash and waxing company in Cheyenne, Wyoming for the last 10. I'm pretty sure that I've sent every single one of you the horrific, awful, disgusting, and horrible things that can happen to not only eyes, but I just want to reiterate a little bit about the importance of sanitation and disinfection. Also, the training that goes into some of these things, the tools that we use on the job are sharp, pointed tweezers at your eyeballs. Knowing to, and not just that, hair services, knowing how to disinfect, say, a comb that is used from one person and then perhaps would be used with another person who maybe is a diabetic or is immunocompromised. Being able to understand and see what lice looks like and not use that same brush on someone else. To speak to the hours, our hours are absolutely doable. I employ 7 women. A lot of them are single moms, and I will tell you, it's a small, I suppose, hurdle to get trained, but it's very important to the public, just to keep them safe. It's very important to me as far as my insurance goes. If everything's deregulated and I hire untrained, unlicensed people, I can't get insurance. And say someone is hurt, how are they covered? They can't go to the state board. They have really no recourse. Yes, you can go to your sister's mom down the street, but I will also tell you, as a business owner, that affects my business. You could go to a cheaper plumber. You could have your Uncle Ed who knows something about the trade of plumbing because he learned from his Uncle Tom, but you can't really know everything that affects everything else unless you've been trained and licensed. So basically what I'm saying as a business owner and as someone in this industry is we like our board. Our state board's doing a great job. The rules and regulations, as far as I'm concerned, and the other people that I've talked to in my industry, we're happy with it. We don't need the overreach of government. We don't need the to be like New York. Wyoming is better than New York, and we want to keep it that way. We're better because we are regulated. Not every industry needs to be unregulated. This one is one that needs to stay that way. Do you have any questions for me? Anything that I can answer?
All right,
for
any
you?
questions, committee? Any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the room? Anyone else? Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Hi, good evening, members of the committee. My name is Erin Taylor, and I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. You already heard from the Community College Commission today. We do have 2 community colleges that offer programming in this area, and I know several of them are, I think, signed up to testify. So I just wanted to mention that we do watch this very closely. All the concerns you heard from Dr. Caldwell, I won't repeat because of timing. So I'll leave you some time with that, but know that there are some folks online who are from those colleges who might be able to answer questions, but I know they'd like to have an opportunity. Thank you.
All right, that sounds good. We have a little bit of time left. So anyone else in the room? One more person in the room, and then we'll take some online testimony as long as we have time for.
Madam
Welcome.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tyler Lindholm. I'm the state director for the Wyoming chapter of Americans for Prosperity. Americans for Prosperity is a grassroots organization, bottom up, that tends to believe in individuals' empowerment. And we stand in favor of this legislation as it is currently written, not amended. We're against the amendment. However, we'll still be in favor of the legislation if it moves forward. And it's based on the simple predication that there's this wild assumption out there that somehow government knows better than customers. This committee, the Senate Ag Committee, throughout the years has amended multiple pieces of legislation around food preparation, much to the success and enjoyment of individuals throughout the state of Wyoming. No one's died. No one's gotten sick. There's been no wild outbreaks of foodborne illnesses. And it's because of this Senate Agricultural Committee that has expanded and grown. And so I would ask, while this is a small reform, professional licensure reform is desperately needed in the state of Wyoming when we're a higher we brag about how business friendly we consistently are. But in this certain area, it's tough to be business friendly when we have higher requirements than a state like New York. So in this type of situation, I think it's a nice little dip into the toe, or dipping your toe into the pond. And I hope that we see more pieces of legislation like this, and definitely not to pick on the cosmetologists or barbers or anything like that. But definitely look at other licensing and see how that works.
All right, any questions, committee? Questions? Thank you for being with us.
Thank
All
you.
right, Pierre, we'll go online now. All right, let's go through the list you've provided. First, Trege Chesser, is that how we pronounce it? From the State Board of Cosmetology.
Yes, I'm here.
Are you there? All right.
I'm here.
Please state your name and where you're from, and then give us a brief comment. We're trying to get as many in as we can before we work the bill.
I understand and I respect your time restraints. My name is Trege Chesser. I'm from Wheatland, Wyoming, and I'm the State Board of Cosmetology president. I've been a stylist for 32 years, and I've been on the board for 12 years. I wanted to make a comment addressing Senator French. His comment about, hi, I understand that there are people that their wives have cut their hair for 100 years and nothing has happened to them. There are people that will go to the neighbor next door and get lashes done and something might not happen to it. And I think sometimes we need to rely on maybe 32 years of experience in the industry and seeing some infections and some herpes of the eyes, which is probably what Aubrey sent you. There is a need for these regulations. And I feel like that keeping the public safe and keeping us certified and professional is the most important thing that we can do for the consumer. I also would like to address the fact of the hours between states. I've worked on the national level for the boards of cosmetology as well. And we are working diligently to make this a state-to-state industry so that professionals can go fluidly from state to state within our industry, and that the certificates that we receive are easily accessible from one state to the next, which would not give us any room for comparison between New York and Wyoming. Some might have to come up, some might have to go down, but it's something that our industry is looking into and that we need to we take it seriously. And I also wanted to make one comment about the hours of the EMTs versus the hours of licensed cosmetologist, barber, whatever, what have you. EMTs are required to have a certain amount of hours of continuing education. There is one state that requires continuing education in the industry of cosmetology. So the hours that we can get on the forefront and teach our candidates about health and safety, back to Mr. French's comment, lots of people can get their hair cut in the kitchen, but you can receive chemical burns from colors, and you can receive MRSA if you have a person in a blowout bar giving you a blow dry first thing in the morning, and the first client has MRSA. The brush isn't disinfected properly, and you could give 10 more people MRSA within about a half an hour using that same brush. So there are regulations for a reason. We are passionate. Obviously, you can see by the amount of response that you got from this bill. We're passionate about keeping our industry safe and professional. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chesser. Any questions from the committee? Thank you so much. We'll go on to Morgan Covert.
Hi, my name's Morgan Covert. I'm the spa director at the Fox Spa and a licensed esthetician here in Casper, Wyoming. I strongly oppose Senate File 0126 and I thank you for hearing our voices and removing some of these topics from the bill, but I still have concerns making me oppose Senate File 126. As a professional and a licensed esthetician, I have bared witness to these damages and from the undereducated and the unlicensed working on the public. These damages can include transmission of diseases, permanent hair loss, and severe burns. When a technician is not required to invest into proper education and proper licensure, they will also not invest in the liability insurance, as most companies will not cover someone in the industry when they only offer a single service. This leaves the public nowhere to seek damages when harm is done. It would be irresponsible to move through with this bill as it sits based on that. When the local market gets saturated with underqualified technicians unknowingly harming the public with substandard services, it will then sour the market on this service so that so many have worked hard to perfect and that their livelihoods depend on. Sorry. I ask the committee to oppose this bill, and if nothing else, please study it in the meantime. So together with lawmakers and experts in the industry, we can come up with responsible and effective ways to help those wishing to enter into this profession. I also want to say that professional licensing is a requirement when the public safety can be at risk. And so I do firmly believe that licensure is still required for hairstyling, for braiding, and for blow drying. I appreciate everybody's time.
All right, thank you so much. Questions, committee? Questions? Seeing none, we'll go on to Leah Juarez. Leah, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Welcome.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the committee for having me to speak today. I am Mayor Juarez from Mills. I am a lash supply distributor, educator, and spa owner. I oppose Senate File 0126 as it stands with the current amendment. Although I have not had time to review the amendments, it's also not published online for me to review. It is my expert recommendation that this bill as a whole should be tabled for study and allow myself and colleagues the opportunity to work with the bill sponsor. I did send an email to all committee members with a PowerPoint presentation, which offers correct information on my industry and how it operates. Today, I was planning on speaking about eyelash extensions, but with the late changes to the bill, I won't be able to. But as this bill stands and has been recently overhauled, I feel it's best to vote no on this bill as it's not ready for a full informed vote at this time. I did make the claim today that these students don't receive adequate education while recommending a decrease in hours, and that doesn't make sense. I'm appreciative that this testimony is on record here, and for that, I will state that as professionals, we attend education to learn about safety and public health. It is on us, the professionals, to seek continuing education after our foundation of education, which is set by the current state standards. So to put it plainly, we go to school to learn how to keep the public safe. We learn our techniques during continuing education after the graduation. I do also want to offer up clarification that grants and scholarships do in fact exist, one of which is through the Wyoming Workforce, which is a full ride scholarship through Casper here in Natrona County. And in closing, I would like to say we must not lower the standard of education simply to limit government overreach. I am more than happy to discuss this actual government overreach and how it affects my business on my salon. However, this bill does not positively affect those working in this industry. I do ask that you send this bill back for more study and involvement with the licensed community. In addition, though, can I address Senator French's question from earlier?
Quickly, because we have a very long list of people who would like to testify.
Sure. So you had asked, is there room for both, Senator French? And I would like to offer some clarification. We can look to the massage therapy industry for that. Here in Casper, they created an ordinance to regulate and license massage therapists to offer a distinction to the public so that the public could be aware of who is in fact educated and has gone to school and licensed and those who aren't. And unfortunately, it just has not been a clear distinction to the public upon which they should choose the licensed individual versus somebody who is self-taught. So unfortunately, it hasn't provided a clear distinction to the public.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next, Brittany Thomas.
You can yield, just so you yield your time.
He is not here. We'll go to Kirby Morris.
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Kirby, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, Kirby. Are you with us?
I can't hear you. I'm so sorry.
We're unable to hear you. Due to time, let's go on to Laura Roberts. Laura, can you hear us? Hello? Laura, are you there? Okay, so the next person on our list is Glenna Zweibel. Glenna, are you with us? Well, it appears that maybe our Zoom is not working. Unfortunately, we have no control. Are you there, Glenna?
Can you hear me?
Oh, goodness.
This is Kirby Morris.
Okay, Kirby, I guess you are the winner of the draw. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to us tonight. My name is Kirby Morris. I am from Casper, Wyoming. I have owned a salon since 1989 here. I've owned a school since 2010. I am the owner of the first barber school in the state of Wyoming. I was appointed by Governors Sullivan, Geringer, and Friedenthal to the Wyoming board. I was elected to the national board 8 times and 3 times as president. I've worked with the Shanghai Labor Bureau to create a regulation of barbering and cosmetology. I have spoken at the House of Commons on this topic. I have worked in 37 states about these issues with legislators. Bob Ide is my neighbor and has not asked me a single question about any of this. We in Wyoming have curriculum mapped with British Columbia, Canada, the United Kingdom, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. There is only one state for the past 50 years that has had 1,000 hours, and that is New York. All of those countries and 37 states we have reciprocity with here in Wyoming. But Senator Ide is going to take that all away from us. We will no longer have reciprocity with any states. We will be like New York and have no education. New York is regulated by a board of salon owners that keeps the education low so they can hire people at a low minimum wage to shampoo and blow dry hair. Wyoming does not have commissioned salons such as this. We are independent contractors. We all own our own businesses, and we don't need you to tell us how to run our businesses. The barriers that you're saying about expensiveness, we have the lowest cost for cosmetology and barbering school in a 12-state neighboring region. You can go to school here cheaper than anywhere west of the Mississippi. And in the state of Wyoming, the great state of Wyoming, if you actually can show that you cannot afford to go to school, then the Wyoming state actually has programs. Wyoming Workforce has vocational rehab and the WIA program that help people go to school. We also in Casper have Climb Wyoming to help single mothers to go to school. There is no barrier such as you were talking about. We don't want to be like New York. This is wrong and bad for the professionals and the public of Wyoming. Businesses in the service industry that are unregulated become human trafficking and prostitution havens. We see this in Mexico, across South America, in Russia, and in Africa. It is a plain fact. And in the same, in these,
Mr. Morris, we
yes,
need
ma'am.
to stick to the bill. And so,
And so the deregulation of these things and offering people to work without licensure will create this. I have worked with all of these countries on these very issues, and I'm willing to talk to anyone in the Senate or the legislature. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And not to cut you off, but we're getting a little off track. We need testimony on this bill that's in front of us, and we really appreciate your broad experience and all that you've shared with us tonight. Do you have any closing short comment on the bill?
I have, yes, I do have closing short comment on the bill. We are not New York. We are not Texas. We are not California, nor do we want to be in our industry. We are regulated very well. In the last 5 years, we have reduced our hours. We have stayed on top of everything across the country. We have board members sitting in front of you who sit on the national board. Please let our industries run our industries. Please don't let the government overreach that Senator Ide has for us affect our income. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Next is Laura Roberts, and we're running short on time. So is she available? Laura, are you with us? Okay, we'll go on down the list. Glenna Zweibel. Glenna, are you with us? Okay, Glenna, welcome to the Ag Committee. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. If you could tell us your name, where you're from, who you're representing, and give us a short comment as we're running a little short on time and we have quite a list here.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for letting me speak. I'm Glenna Zwiebel. I live in Torrington, Wyoming. I'm a cosmetology instructor at EWC. Most of my questions and concerns have been addressed. There are a few, like with the braiding and stuff, but at this point, I'm willing to pass on that so others can speak on the bill. I am opposed to it. I think it needs more time and consideration and a better thought process put into it. So I would urge you guys to vote against it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us tonight. All right. Our next person is Donna Sharon. Would Donna be available on Zoom?
Yep.
Hi, Donna. Welcome to the committee. Please let us know who you are and give us your comments.
My name is Donna Sharon, and I'm a East Wyoming.
Hearing you.
And I would like to thank you, all the students, brief highlights.
We can't hear you, Donna.
There, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can. There you go.
I would like to take a moment to talk just about the education level that we would be unable to provide for our students to even be successful at an entry-level stage. There are many infection control and safety issues associated with even simple styling techniques, and even to the point where we're talking about ingredient technology with our chemicals, which definitely provides a very large safety factor. I am always encouraged by my students that when they start school will say, I already do braiding, I already do styling. Let me show you how we do it here, only to find out when we talk about the possibility of scalp burns, singeing the hair. With braiding, there is significant hair loss, oftentimes if done incorrectly, too tight. There's a lot of factors involved with it. So as far as these niche beauty services that were referred to, there are definitely safety issues associated with them, regardless of who is doing them at the neighbor's house, whatever that might be. I also have some very large concerns with the definitions that were listed. In particular, and I was trying to follow which ones have been amended, but to the best of my knowledge, it's 33-12-120. A, as used in this act, down with number 9, I believe, and it defines the practice of hairstyling. Means any single practice or service or a combination of practices or services performed for others. And I believe the verbiage included is including hair cutting. And I'm not sure if I understand that right, but to me, that says that you would have to have absolutely zero training in how to cut hair. Not to mention the tools that you're using, and definite safety, not only to the consumer, but to the practitioner themselves. So those are my main points. And again, I do also have to say, there is a tremendous amount of financial aid opportunity for students to enroll in school. We do offer each certificate separately, so it's available to just about anybody that wants to participate and become a professional in this industry. So again, thank you for your time. Please reconsider this bill.
Thank you, Donna. We appreciate your time tonight.
Ms. Mulligan, I can't hear a thing.
Next would be Sarah Harris. Sarah Harris would be next.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, and we can see you too.
Oh, hi.
Ed Committee, let us know your name and who you are representing.
Okay. Thank you for your time. My name is Sarah Harris, and I'm actually just a consumer who wanted to share a story about what happened to me that has changed my life for forever. When you either don't enforce or do not regulate an industry like this, I think it's a common misconception that, you're going for a fun haircut or eyelashes or whatever. And that happened to me in 2021. I had lashes done here. I went home to California for a month to visit family. My sister scheduled me with her lash technician to get a fill. My sister's like clinical diagnosed OCD, very clean by the book. And so I had no reason to question her choices. As soon as I got to the salon, I should have listened to my gut. Something didn't feel right. The lady did not have the lashes I had in stock. And instead of just taking them all off and starting over, she decided to first cut off all my eyelashes, including my natural eyelashes underneath there. I left the salon, I went home, and my eyes began to burn, and the burning as my eyes watered just got worse and worse and worse. My eyes, which I shared photos, they are pretty graphic and disgusting. I ended up with blisters on my eyes. I had noticed after the fact, I almost went to the hospital, thought I was being dramatic. I should have gone to the hospital. I noticed after the fact that my glasses stopped working, and I had a very minor prescription for a very minor astigmatism that I only had because I drove trash trucks. I ended up going to the eye doctor, and my vision had completely nosedived, and I was eventually diagnosed with keratoconus, and they believe that it's from a chemical burn to my eyes that I received with an unregulated lash technician. I have irreversible damage. I will eventually need a corneal transplant, and the maintenance to my eyes is now costing me anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a year out of my own pocket, as there's a loophole between medical and vision. But yes, I am the consumer that, you think it just isn't a big deal and we don't care. I'm all for freedom, but I absolutely would never, ever, ever subject anybody to what I went through. And I know the lashes, it sounds like you guys are dealing with that, which is excellent, but there is risk in every single category of which you've discussed, and it should not be understated. We are just consumers. We are not meant to be educated completely. And the industry in itself with the board is there to keep us safe as well.
All right. Okay, well, thank you for being with us tonight, and we hope you get to feeling better. With that committee, we are at 7:10, which is when we said we were going to cut off testimony. I would think that probably the rest of the testimony will go like the first of it has, and so unfortunately, we will not be able to get to the rest of the people online. With that, we will close public comments. And committee, what is your pleasure?
I'll move the bill.
The bill's been moved by Senator French. Do I have a second? Seconded by Senator Ide. All right, committee, are there any amendments on the bill? Amendments to the bill? Senator Kolb?
Not an amendment.
Okay, well, we'll see if we amend the bill, then we'll have discussion before we vote. So go ahead, Senator Ide. Did you want to move your amendment?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to move my amendment. that
All
I've-
right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's seconded by French, moved by Ide. All right, and so we've got that amendment. We've already got that lined in at the beginning of, does anybody have any questions on that amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The amendment has been adopted. Are there any further amendments? Further amendments on the bill? Okay, discussion committee, discussion on the bill. Senator Ide?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't realize how contentious this issue would be. I was intending to help the industry and maybe cause a little more freedom with less regulation. You know, there is a lot of support for this, maybe outside of this room. I've got you know, a lot of these great clips, J.C. Penney, they're all in support of the 1,000-hour thing that we basically just eliminated. But I was going on a lot of that detail. There was a coalition of industry trade association, including American Association of Cosmetology Schools, that commissioned an independent study. And, you know, the study there wasn't any different in outcomes of the programs differing in lengths from the 1,000 hours to the 1,500 hours. You guys probably, the people more in the industry probably know more about that than I do, but it's going on a lot of stuff, information that I was getting, and was just trying to help people get into the profession a little bit more without the onerous, you know, hours that you had to have for education. So it was good to hear from everybody today. I'm a lot more educated. The guy from Casper, Kirby, maybe my mistake to not contact people in the industry a little bit more. I still think I like the bill, even though it's amended, just to try to help deregulate things and make it easier for people to come in to get a job. So with that, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Ide. Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to bring up the question, is this bill even amendable? The bill's been so altered in the bill title. You've struck 5 out of, you left 1 items within the designated amending licensure requirements. And you only got barbers left and you struck all the rest. I mean, it looks, I have questions about it, if it's even able to be moved forward. I mean, looks like it's been too heavily amended in the bill title. That was my first question, Madam Chairman.
All right, that's maybe more of a comment.
Well, I'm just.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I'd like to continue then.
Yeah.
So it's 600 hours. So how in the heck did we go from 1,000 hours, I guess, in New York, which I don't want to emulate, how's that sound? And we go to 600 hours, which is 75 days, which is 2.5 months. And I got a comment, so you're a professional at 600 hours? I just wondered why it wasn't 1,000 and why it was lowered. So obviously I've got an issue with that, but more importantly, the constitutionality of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Kolb. Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a comment. I'm going to vote aye, just to move it to the Senate floor where another 26 voices can weigh in on this.
All right, any further comments? Seeing none, I will make some of my own And I signed on as a co-sponsor on this, and I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna have to vote no on this bill. I think we could come back and work with the industry and try to get something a little more palatable between the people that you're working with and them. And so with that, do you have any further comments on your bill before we vote?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is all kind of new to me. I'm not sure what the best approach is to move this, whether to try to move it forward or try to rework this some other way in the future, or just not rework it at all. I mean, I'm all, like one of the testimony tonight is just to make it easier for people to go to work. And that's where I struggle with this. And I understand all of the comments tonight that not necessarily maybe the people wanting to get into the business, but the people that are established, they have a little different view on that, and I respect that view. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
having been in my colleague's position on a couple of occasions, having been here for a little bit of while, it's usually been my observation on this is I think you got everybody's attention, and I think this is a perfect springboard to take this to an interim topic and get all the parties involved and engaged. I don't think anybody would disagree that, you know, fewer hours with more intensity to create better students is not a good thing for the industry. And so, Madam Chairman, it's been my experience is probably would be to lay the bill back. Let's key this up as an interim topic, get support from the industry to do that. And if you don't show up, industry, you know what happens if you don't show up in your next time, you may not get the ability to participate. But Mr. Chairman or Madam Chairman, I think this is a really good start for something that's, I think we all understand now it's a little more complicated than I ever anticipated, and particularly how it affects, you know, from people getting into the industry, existing businesses, our community colleges, training programs. So that would be my recommendation, Mr. Chairman. So I know we have a motion on the floor, but I really think this is a starting point, and that's my suggestion.
Senator Ide, I think that's a great suggestion because you have an engaged constituency here that I think you could work with. And so would you consider withdrawing your motion on the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think those comments were very well taken. I don't think it has, especially with me presenting this bill, wouldn't have a whole lot of traction going upstairs anyway, because I'm not real schooled on it. So I think the best thing to do maybe at this point is to lay it back. And with that, I'm not sure the process or what I need to say right now to like just
withdraw your motion.
Just withdraw the motion. I'll withdraw my motion.
All right. Thank you, Senator Ide. And I really appreciate your willingness to work with all of us on this. And your intentions were good. All of our intentions were good, and the industry's intentions are good. The college's intentions are good. So I think moving forward, we'll have a good outcome in working in partnership. So,
Madam Chairman, could we have staff capture that as an interim topic?
yes.
So
Thank
we
you,
wanna make
Linda.
sure we get that to the right committee.
All right. And it won't be us. I don't think. We're just helping out, trying to take some extra bill load. So thank you, everyone, for being here. We learned a lot tonight. All right. The next bill for our consideration are you ready? Is Senate File 107, Acquisition, Exchange, and Sale of Trust Lands.
Madam Chairman, I'm not on the phone plan, I'm just going to do it.
All right.
Director, in case there's questions.
Welcome. This is a little bit more in our genre, so welcome to the Ag Committee. All right.
How's my hair look, by the way?
I don't think I'm the right
what
one to
hair?
ask. All right. Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
Maybe
and-
I could borrow some from Senator French. She seems to have an Alexis.
You know, he's outstanding in his field.
Yes, I am.
All right, go ahead.
All right, Madam Chairman, I bring you Senate File 107, Acquisition, Exchange, and Sale of Trust Lands. And members of the committee, just a little background on this. You know, we're getting increasingly pressure from a lot of areas as to try to lock up and consolidate better management, public access, all these things just keep revolving around, you know. There's a lot of information out there. We do have a lot of lands that are landlocked. I honestly think we also have lands that we can probably, through some exchanges and some sales, derive a higher rate of return for the fiduciary responsibility, which is to fund our public school system. So, Madam Chairman and members of the committee, this is just a modest step to start in the direction of trying to, what I would say, streamline and improve our trust land management and facilitate some of those other amenities that those lands provide. So, Madam Chairman, I'm just going to go through the bill that creates a new section in Title 36, which deals with the Office State Land Board, acquisition, exchange, and sales of trust lands. And Madam Chairman, these first couple of provisions, so when we go through A, B, and C, those are existing policies right now within the Office of State Lands and Investment. And if you go over to page 3 and you look at line 2, this has kind of been the policy that they've operated on since 1999. So what we're just bringing in is trying to codify what a policy has been, and it's been really an unstated policy. But I think the Office of State Lands and the State Land Board have kind of honored this policy over a period of time. I actually remember when this came in, and it was pretty contentious at the time because there was, at that time, there was I don't want to say a firestorm, but there was a lot of state land that was being sold at the time, and it caught the public's attention. And so that was the genesis of the policy. But what the policy just does is go in there under Romanet or under subsection A, and it just says that the board under trust lands for the beneficiaries can acquire, exchange, or sell a fee-tile interest in state lands provided, and this gets to what we talk about as the $10,000 cap. It can't be a net increase above 10,000 acres of the assets, so we can't go above 10,000 acres. Subsection B, again, the board may acquire fee title, so they could take that the revenues off of those lands that they sold and then go acquire other lands to try to maintain that portfolio of plus or minus 10,000 acres. Madam Chairman, so that authorizes the board to make those acquisitions. Subsection C, they just balance those acquisitions on a county by county basis. Madam Chairman, discussing this with the office, I'll bring a proposed amendment to that because that in fact was what I would say was a lofty goal, but probably not in practice to be able to do that on a county by county basis. And so we'll discuss that, Madam Chairman, when we go to page 3, subsection 2. We're just amending a couple of sections. Again, this goes into under 1134-109. This is the Farm Loan Board or Farm Loan Program. And what we would do is people that wanted, if it was necessary, if they wanted to purchase those from the state of Wyoming. So these 80s, 40s, or any division of land smaller than that. So we're only talking about 80-acre parcels or smaller. So if they were in a position that they needed to borrow money, they could go to the farm loan program and borrow that money for the acquisition of those state lands. That's what 11-34-109 deals with, the farm loans. Madam Chairman, we go back into the State Land Board, just bring in the definition, and the definition here is isolated parcels. So what we're really trying to do is not target every single 80-acre parcel out there. What we're trying to get to those, and particularly these ones that are landlocked, that it's difficult to get to them from an either administrative standpoint, or we certainly don't want to encourage some level of public access to these lands. And so the concept is just to start very modestly, these isolated parcels. So if they're already in a large block of accessible land, those are not the ones we're looking at. So primarily looking at, start with either private or some other in-holding, and try to get those parcels moved off, exchanged or sold for those private landowners, and then use those to go ahead and acquire other state lands that would facilitate either better trust land management, higher return for the investment, and then also the board can consider things like public access and recreation and other amenities at that time. But more than anything else, it's to block these up into manageable blocks and try to get a higher return on the leases on these public lands, Madam Chairman. Next one is just renumbering, because we brought in a new subsection 8. And then this next one, Madam Chairman, this goes back into the orders and rules relative to the exchange of lands. And so it's existing language until you go to page 5. And it just brings out, including the disposal of isolated parcels, that is 80 acres or less. You'll see conforming language over on page 6. Madam Chairman, that's the bill.
All right. Questions, committee? Questions for Senator Hicks? I guess I have a question. Do we have kind of a list? Because we've worked on this before when we were on the Ag Committee, not specifically to this size of, but I remember our lists and what we were looking at. Do we have a list of identified parcels, or would that be something you would do later on? Director.
Madam
Welcome.
Chairman, Jennifer Scoggin, Director, Office of State Lands and Investments. With me is Deputy Director Jason Crowder. I think the list was made prior to my time, so I would have to defer to Deputy Crowder here for a response on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have created several lists for lands that could be identified for disposal. I don't believe I interpret the bill as being, these are all the lands that we're immediately going to sell. But if a landowner who had these isolated within his property wanted to acquire them, that we could use this process to do it. So no, we don't have a list specifically for 80 acres and less. We could get one, finding one that, or finding a list that also identified all that were isolated would be a little bit more of a lift for our office. But I think we interpret the bill as being an opportunity for these parcels of this acreage to be funded in a certain way and to have more of a higher priority when we analyze them.
Thank you for that. So you anticipate more, it's someone coming to you, not us initiating the process.
Madam Chair, that's how
All right.
how I
thank you.
interpret. Mr. Senator Hicks may have a different idea.
He might. Thank you. Senator French, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question. So somebody has that 80, that state land and surrounded by their ranch or whatever, their property. And that purchase goes through, and let's say it's, I'm just throwing numbers out there, it's $500,000 that they purchase that at. Do you keep that 500,000 in a separate account so that if there's 1,000 acres of state land, and then if you could get 40 acres from a ranch for access to a whole bunch of public land, or where does that money go? Just back into the fund, or what?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Senator French, the funds aren't deposited into a separate account. When state land is sold, those funds are put into the permanent land fund and then invested by the state treasurer's office to generate a yield off of that. So they're not in a specific account held separate for purchase later. However, the statute does allow us to use funds out of that account that is invested by the state treasurer to purchase. So how we account for that is simply on paper. When we find a property, as you mentioned, to acquire, that we ask the state treasurer's office for enough funds to accomplish that acquisition. They, through their investment strategy, keep a certain amount of funds liquid just in case this would happen, but there's no separate pot of money just waiting for land acquisition. It's all invested through the treasurer's office.
All right, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you,
right.
Madam Chairman. Real quick, so who might initiate that? Would it be your staff or Game and Fish, or who might initiate that? Say, God, if we had that 40 acres, if that person would sell 40 acres, we've got access to 200,000 acres of public land. Who would initiate that process?
And Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
really anybody can initiate that process. We can, the Game and Fish can, any member of the public can initiate that process, and we would go through and vet whatever they proposed.
Thank
All
you.
right, okay, any further questions? Did you want to, would the agency like to give testimony with, we jumped into questions right away.
No, that's fine, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity, and we appreciate Senator Hicks's bill here. I think that the intention and is one that we like, which is to be able to clean up some of these smaller parcels that are isolated out there that we can't really get to. It's easier for us to manage lands that are blocked up, and so sometimes these can be a little bit annoying. And I will just mention a couple things about the farm loan program that Senator Hicks mentioned. And just to note that I think it's Senate File 71, there are some proposed changes to that program, which I don't know would necessarily impact the ability here to loan funds for this process. But under Senate File 71, it's going to reduce the amount of funds available for that program significantly. And so I think we would just have to see sort of the popularity of financing through that program. And those are in fact permanent funds. So as people would pay those loans back, that money, as Deputy Director Crowder was saying, goes back to the Treasurer's office to replace those permanent funds. And should there be a problem, then we have the loan loss reserve account to pay back those funds as well. And if that still doesn't work, and to my knowledge, well, it's been a long time since it hasn't worked, let's just say that, but there may need to be an appropriation to pay back the permanent funds should somebody default or bankruptcy where those funds are not accounted for. Also wanted to just mention that there is another way currently under statute to finance, I suppose, these sorts of purchases under Wyoming Statute 369107. There is the installment contract ability, which is essentially you have to pay 25% of whatever the sales value is, and then the remaining 75% can be amortized and with an annual payment over 30 years. So that is also another possibility, although the interest rate for that is set by rule, and I believe right now it's 8%, so that's a little bit high. Whereas the farm loan, if in fact Senate File 71 goes forward, the interest rates would be equal to the yield on the U.S. Treasury security of the same duration as the loan, and the board could add up to 2% for risk premium of these rates, and the interest rate can't be less than 3%, but right now we figured it would be about 3.6% if somebody wanted to do that.
Pretty good. All right. All right, any questions, committee? Questions for the agency? Senator Ide?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to, sorry, I'm studying this bill. So does that, on the, the first part of this where it says allowing for farm loans to purchase specified trust lands, first part of the bill, how does that put the state into the banking business, I guess, is my question. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Ide, go ahead. We already are.
Yeah.
Is the answer to that. So, and actually in Senate File 71, Senator Ide, we're reducing the amount that has traditionally been there to be borrowed. So, but go ahead, Director, and you can answer that better than I can probably.
Madam Chairman, Senator Ide, that's really a policy call, if you will, of the legislature. The current farm loan program is structured to be more of a safety net loan program. So when interest rates get really high and it's difficult for the ag community to obtain a loan, under the regular farm loan program, the interest rate is 8% or 9%, depending upon the amount financed. And so again, that wouldn't make sense necessarily in today's climate, but if interest rates went to 12 or 15% and it was difficult to get a loan, that would be an avenue for that farm loan program. And then as part of the current farm loan program, there's a beginning agricultural producer provision, which has the lower of 8% or the 10-year US Treasury bill, I think is sort of the benefit, if you will, for a beginning ag producer. And there's some criteria for that. So the way the program sits right now, it's viewed as more of a helping hand, if you will, to the beginning ag community and more of a safety net, a loan of last resort for the ag community when times get tight. The revisions in Senate File 71 has more of a market interest rate. And of course, as I mentioned, that's the discretion of the legislature to determine that.
All right. Are we good, committee? Any further questions? Anything else, Senator Hicks and from the agency?
Madam Chair, Senator Hicks alluded to the fact of changing the bill a little bit for having exchanges within a county. When we addressed it with him, we have done a lot of exchanges that span a county line, a lot of really good and large exchanges, and that part of the bill may be problematic. It's very often that those exchanges do span county lines because of the amount of acreage needed, but the span of county lines is typically within miles and not state edge of the state to the other edge of the state. So we just ask that provision be removed because it would hinder doing large, good, and successful exchanges going forward.
All right. I think the good sponsor might have that penciled in. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Madam
Senator
Chairman,
Hicks?
can I ask a question?
Yes.
So one of the things that we need to know is, or well, probably need to do is make sure that these lessees of these isolated parcels are aware of this opportunity or program and stuff. So I'll probably put a notice requirement in here that the office has to send out to those individuals. What's a reasonable time frame for that to happen, and what's the cost associated with that? People don't know about it, they won't utilize it, and so at some point in time we need to make folks. So,
and Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, I think it depends on who you're wanting us to notice. If it's more of a broad-based global notice on the website kind of thing or in the newspaper, that's pretty easy. But if you're looking for us to notify adjoining landowners, or surrounding various isolated parcels, that's going to take some time to kind of sift through the prior lists and figure out who might be eligible for that.
so my thought is to work on that list to get, who would be eligible for this program and what we're really trying to accomplish. So it would be both on the website, obviously, any renewals notification, any permit renewals, lease renewals, but then also some of those given your 10-year leases, we'd like to get them some notice, and it'd probably be a mail unless we have electronic communications. But I think it's important that we get the information out and say, here's a program, make yourself available of it. So any idea, Mr. Crowder?
From a procedural standpoint, how long do you think?
Madam Chair, Senator Hicks, I think the bill is speaking directly to existing lessees. So we do a lot of corresponding with them through the renewal process and through the annual rental process. And I think it would be very easy for us to add this provision that this is an opportunity for them to take advantage of, and just give it to every single lessee out there, and then they can make the determination if they're eligible for it. We've also got the expedited exchange program within the rules that isn't heavily utilized, but could be, and maybe it's because nobody really understands that it's available. So I think we could add it to both of those notices, and that will start in August of this year, and it will end in February of next year. So if you are giving us a timing to do that by February of next year, or March or so,
I think
may give us a little leeway.
Just making a normal budget year or so from, you'd have to provide notice by June 30th of 2024. Would that work?
All right. Any further questions, committee? Seeing none,
Thank
we'll
you.
let you off the hot seat tonight. And is
Yes,
there,
Madam Chairman, I got one other question.
all right,
Real quick. So-
come on back. That was short-lived.
It's on page 2, and we get the subsection B on line 15, and I'm just aware of the amount of time that it takes to do an exchange or a purpose, and it seems to me like 24 months might be a pretty short time frame. What's your thoughts on that? We need to extend that a year, run it out to 36 months, or?
Okay, Senator Hicks, let's clarify for everybody. You're on page 2.
Line 15. Yeah.
And we would be looking at 24 months.
Yeah, is that an adequate time frame?
Madam Chair, Senator Hicks, as much time as you can give us would certainly be appreciated. As Senator Hicks mentioned in his opening remarks, this is a policy that we've abided by since 2005. The legislature gave us this direction through a budget footnote to stay within that 10,000 acre no net gain above or below, and we have stayed within that. In fact, right now we're at 3,300 acres below that baseline, but we've never actually gone above it. And the only time that we were ever in danger of going above or below that 10,000 acres was when the state was considering the Oxy acquisition. But since then, we've been able to manage ourselves fairly well, even with the larger transactions. So 24 months seemed feasible in my mind when we were reviewing the bill, but as much time as you could give us, that would be really beneficial, because these things are not anything that we mandate. We have to take them as they come, and maybe they don't come for a little while. So as much time as you could give us, that would be appreciated.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So if we bump that up to, let's say 36 months, 3 years, when do you determine, I know you have to go through a lot of things, but when do you determine the price on that? Somebody wants to buy an 80 or a 40 that's landlocked inside their property, and they come to you and say, hey, I would like to start the process and buy that 80 acres. At what point in the process do you say, okay, it's X amount of dollars? Because as time goes by, it could increase in value or whatever. When is that locked in? So they know, everybody knows. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Senator French, we have a very established process for that. An application comes in, we review it for its merits against the trust land management objectives. It's placed on a Category 1 list at that time. It's presented to the director, and the director needs to decide if it does meet those trust land management objectives or not. And if it does, then it moves to Category 2, and then we present it to the Board of Land Commissioners in an executive session. The Board of Land Commissioners directs us informally to move forward with the transaction or not, if they also feel it meets those trust land management objectives or has the opportunity to. And if they tell us to move forward, then we show it to them in open session, where they vote to direct the office to move forward in the rest of the analysis process. And that is where we will start talking about the appraisals of all the property involved, how that will be done, and how we are expected to negotiate basically a buy-sell agreement, but notice to initiate the exchange. And it's at that time where we lay out the rules and the road ahead of who will be responsible for what and when it will occur. But essentially, it's that point in time where the appraisal becomes identified and will be completed. And the appraisal sets the value. And it's after the Board of Land Commissioners gives us that initial authority to move forward with the analysis.
And now I think good to go. If not, you'll always wish you would have been. All right. Is there any public testimony on this bill? I see the Farm Bureau coming up. I could not believe they didn't testify on our last bill. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. That was a little too hairy of a situation for Farm Bureau, pardon the pun. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, generally supporting this bill. The part on Part C that's on page 2 and 3 of the bill, I will point out that the wording is to the extent possible. It's not an absolute. Actually, my members have policy. We would like to keep the governmental land on a county by county basis at the level we are now, not to add a lot to one and then to keep it constant on a county basis. Again, pointing out that is to the extent possible. It's not an absolute. A question on, I mentioned a little bit of this to the sponsor earlier. On page 4, on lines 1 through 3, means a parcel of state land surrounded by non-state lands and without access to the parcel. That gives me a little bit of pause. I'm assuming that even if it was completely surrounded by federal lands, that the state would still have access to it. My suggestion on that would be to add the word on line 2 before access public, so that line would read without public access. I don't know if that I think that gets to the gist of the bill, because I think having worked on this issue previously, I think the idea is to block up parcels that don't have public access. And the good sponsor knows that I have been known to see black helicopters. What I'm afraid of is that since the state does have access, could that mean under that definition, nothing could be sold? And that's not the goal. The goal is to block things up. So I would suggest that as a possible amendment. I think that hopefully it gets to what the bill is looking to do. And then a question on line 6, or excuse me, page 6, lines 19 and 20. Currently that reads, make state lands more manageable where the lands are not otherwise manageable. And then added is including the disposal of the isolated parcel that is 80 acres or less. Is that needed? I think, I'm guessing that the idea is to really target these smaller parcels. I understand that if that's why it's there, but I'm kind of questioning it does it even need to be there? I don't think it hurts anything, but does it need to be there? And typically, unlike my talking, shorter is usually better. With that, Chairman Steinmetz, committee, I'd sit for any questions you may have for me.
Questions, committee? Questions? All right, seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there any other public testimony? Was there any online? Nope, it's for the next bill. So with that, committee, what is your pleasure on the bill? Public testimony is closed. The bill's been moved by Kolb.
Second.
Seconded by French. Are there any amendments on the bill?
Madam Chairman,
Yes. Senator Hicks.
page 2, line 15. Strike the word 24 and insert 36 months.
36 months. Linda, did you get that? All right.
Let's just dispose of these one at a time.
All right. Any discussion on the amendment? Is there a second on the amendment?
Second.
Seconded by Kolb, moved by Hicks. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment has been adopted. Any further amendments?
Madam Chairman,
Yes?
on page 2, starting, I would just strike all of subsection C at the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3, and just to address the concerns from my friend with the Farm Bureau is I think the state land board is very cognizant of trying to balance that out. It comes up in every single land exchange that I'm aware of, and so I don't know that we need to put it in there because it'll be considered. I'm almost positive of that. So just clean up the statute a little bit, Madam Chairman.
Is there a second on that amendment?
Second.
Seconded by French, moved by Hicks. Everyone understands we're deleting subsection C, lines 20 through 23 on page 2, and lines 1 and 2 on page 3. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The amendment has been adopted. Are there any further amendments?
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Page
Senator
4,
Hicks.
line 2. I do think that the input we got on that is exactly what we're trying to do. So after the word without, insert the word public. So it'll read without public access to the parcel.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Hicks, seconded by Kolb. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The amendment has been adopted. Any further amendments on the bill? Further amendments on the bill? Seeing none. Is there any discussion on the bill?
Madam Chairman,
Yep.
just to, Jason, if you could get me some language on that notice to include that in there, that would be helpful. And then I'm gonna look at that, also probably bring in that 369107 as another alternative for consideration and put that in there. But Madam Chairman, I'll do that as a committee of the whole amendment. So if you can get that to me, and then I'll have the 369107 pulled out. But how you'd like to see that notice submitted. And we don't need the verbiage, just something to say that that the office will submit notice of availability of the program. And so whatever language is most acceptable to you guys, if you can get that to me.
Right, okay. Seeing no further discussion, Linda, would you call the roll?
Senator French.
Aye.
Senator Hicks.
Aye.
Senator Ide.
Aye.
Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Aye. And this is a personal bill, so Senator Hicks will have it on the floor. We don't need to worry about
We
it.
can talk Senator Ide into doing that for me.
Well, that's between you and Senator Ide. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 138, Unemployment Insurance Coverage Period and Reporting. And with the good explanation of this bill is Senator Cole.
Chairman, would you want to sit up here and do it or down there?
Well, if you'd like to go down in front, that might be better. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. So we have a few different bills than we normally see in the Ag Committee. So thank you and welcome to those who are here and that are not normally with us. So take it away when you're ready, Senator Cole.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. In front of you is Senate File 138. And really, basically, what 38 does, 138, is change the benefits from 26 weeks to 13 weeks for unemployment benefits, and cuts the extended benefits from 13 weeks to 6.5 weeks. And probably most importantly to me, it renames it to reemployment insurance instead of unemployment insurance. I think it sets a lot better tone and expectations with people. I think the policy will have negligent effects on the amount of funding in this state trust fund solvency. We are currently at 2.5 times the necessary minimum funding. I think this affords us an opportunity to get our folks back to work. I think, I'll just bring you back to myself. When I was seeking employment, I guess I found any darn job I could find, and I got myself a better one over time and kept on climbing until I, got to where I wanted to be. And I think we've got a lot of people that are very capable of doing that in the state of Wyoming, good people that can go back to work sooner than they currently have the opportunity to now, because the benefits are, from my point of view, a little too lengthy. So this is an attempt to rein that in. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Senator Kolb. Are there any questions for Senator Kolb on this bill? Any questions? Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Kolb, how does this jive with federal, and they kept extending of unemployment for weeks and weeks and weeks, during COVID and everything. How's this jive with that?
Thank you, Senator French. I'm unsure if there's a conflict with the federal regulations to changing the state regulations. I do know the COVID emergency is supposed to be over with, according to a statement. Well, they made a statement, they're going to conclude it. And it affects a lot of things. It's my understanding, obviously, that this does not tie to that. I guess the agency can comment with those bits of information.
All right, any further questions?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I would just phone a friend and see if the director could come up and help answer that question as to where we at. I believe that they pulled back the additional federal benefits and into 2021 sometime, but Robin, if you could help us out with that.
Welcome, Director. Thanks for being here with us tonight. Can you help us with that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. As it relates to the pandemic unemployment benefits that were enacted during COVID, those were by executive order of the governor. Those were terminated early, actually, so those have all stopped. We're back to our regular unemployment benefits that we're now implementing. So I believe that answers the question that you had. Is that correct?
Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not sure. So executive order from the president or the governor? Who does the feds overrule the state on this issue or not?
Madam Chairman,
Go ahead.
Senator French, no, those were executive orders of the governor that instituted and agreements with the federal government that instituted those 5 pandemic COVID unemployment programs that extended and added additional benefits during COVID. Those were then terminated early by the governor, in fact. And so we're now back to our regular unemployment benefits. Now, each unemployment benefit in each state, it is a state-run program, but it is overseen by the federal government. So we do have a Department of Labor overview or oversight of what we do, but it is a state-run program, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. And Director, would you like to just stay up there and we'll let Senator Kolb come back to his seat if he'd like to come. Go ahead, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just like to say Director Cooley has been really gone beyond, I thought, what she needed to do. She was very helpful, supplied all the information, and I greatly appreciate that. I just wanted to say that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, Director Cooley, do you have anything else to add, or would you like to bring up others with you to inform us on this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have a couple of helpers with me.
Great.
And if we could also, we've got Chris Funk, who is our UI administrator in Casper. If
All
we could
right.
let her into the Zoom room.
Can we do that, Pierre? Let Chris Funk in online, and then do we need Holly as well?
And I've got her right next to me.
Oh, Holly.
I wasn't sure about the weather, and so.
All right. Well, welcome.
I
We're
didn't
glad you're here in
look into
person.
that.
We've been having a little trouble with our Zoom, so. All right. We'll go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Robin Cooley, and I'm the Director of the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services, and it is a pleasure to be here tonight. We haven't appeared in front of this committee before, so it's a privilege and a pleasure, so thank you for having us. So we're here to talk about the exact thing that we do in our agency and the exact thing that we're really focused on, especially right now, and that is reemployment of our workforce. And that's exactly the intent, I think, of this bill, is to reduce the weeks of unemployment so we can get people back into the workforce. And I will tell you, as I've traveled the state over the past several years, that's the main question I'm getting, is where are all our workers? And what we would like to do today is try to help answer that question, try to help identify for you what it is that we are doing in order to address that situation, and also address some of the concerns that we have relating to this particular bill, and as it relates to our communities as a whole and our agency, and also as a side note, the implementation date for this bill as well. So with that, what I'd like to do is have Administrator Holly McCamey Simone, who is our administrator of our workforce programs in our office, go through some of those. And I'm sorry, I didn't identify who is on the Zoom with us. That is our UI administrator, Chris Funk. She is really our UI expert in Casper and runs that program there and does a really excellent job for us. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Administrator McCamey Simone.
All right. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. The director has already introduced me. Thank you so much. I just wanted to briefly go over some data points and then briefly review eligibility requirements as well, if that's okay.
Go
So-
right ahead.
Thank you. When states consider reducing benefits for claimants, we typically look at, and it's based on 3 factors: reducing taxes to employers by reducing those weeks benefits are paid out, the trust fund solvency, and getting people back to work with reemployment efforts. In Wyoming, the current average duration of weeks on unemployment that a claimant is receiving benefits is 14.7 weeks. In 2020, our research and planning unit collected data and categorized that into specific occupation codes, which showed that in Wyoming, the greatest number of the average weeks on UI benefits was 11.2. And most recently, our data shows that 75% of people who utilize UI benefits go back to work within 13 weeks. We will talk about the reason and our reemployment efforts for those going beyond 13 weeks. Our Wyoming UI tax rates remain historically low, and 44% of our employers receive a 0 rate for 2023, received a 0 rate. Our UI tax rates are low and have remained low since the recession in 2009. During the pandemic, those additional UI benefits were paid for by CARES Act dollars that were specifically earmarked for UI. The legislature and our governor implemented additional efforts to keep rates low. Our UI trust fund in Wyoming is one of the healthiest in the nation, and in 2022, we were ranked number 1, due in part to the foresight of our Wyoming legislature, who created a formula that ensures our trust fund is healthy and solvent. I also wanted to share with you our reemployment efforts. Wyoming was recently awarded 2 grants totaling $2.8 million. The first grant is our Reemployment Service and Eligibility Assessments Grant. And I also oversee the Employment and Training Workforce Centers along with UI, and this grant is a collaboration between those 2 units. It's a collaboration between UI and Workforce Centers. They will work together as required partners to focus on reducing the duration of UI through improved employment outcomes. And this also strengthens our UI program integrity and gets people back into the workforce more quickly through evidence-based solutions and strategies. Our second grant promotes easier understanding and navigation of our YUI system for employers and claimants. It implements plain language, mobile device options, document upload features, and more intuitive and easier to navigate screens. It reduces the confusion and frustration we've heard from claimants and employers with our system and helps with fraud and integrity overall. Now I would ask that you refer to our handout titled Summary of Wyoming's UI Program. I believe it's 2 pages, and the second page has got a chart with it. The Wyoming Unemployment Insurance Program contains concrete eligibility requirements. So to qualify for those UI benefits, a person must have lost their job through no fault of his or her own. So quitting a job for no reason will generally disqualify an individual from receiving benefits. They must be able and available and actively seeking work. The claimant has to make 2 employer contacts each week to seek work and must be registered for work in the state they are located in. And for us, that's our Wyoming at Work system.
Can I stop you right there for just a second? Because I have a
Yes.
question on that one part.
Yes.
So I, as an employer myself, and then also speaking with other employers, we've seen it be increasingly difficult to be able to prove that that we didn't owe the benefits. And so it seems, have you had any indication of that? And what is your experience with that? Have you heard the same things that I'm hearing, that when it's legitimately not a claim that should be paid, it tends to be erring on the side of the person that was let go rather than the business owner?
Madam Chairman,
person.
members of the committee, I have not heard that, but Chris Funk, our UI administrator that's on the line, she might be able to answer that more thoroughly. Typically, if there is an issue, it will go to appeals, and our appeals division will thoroughly investigate that and garner more information from our employer and from the claimant.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, a question from Senator Cole?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question. Are you still using the mail service for notice?
Madam Chairman and Senator Kolb, we do use both ways to notify claimants and employers. So if you are registered in our YUI system, you can select for email correspondence, and you can also have paper documentation sent to you as well.
Okay. All right. Well, go right ahead and then get us to the point where we have comments on the bill.
Okay.
So-
Just a couple more things on eligibility. Our UI benefits are individualized, formula-based, and prevents individuals from accessing benefits if they're only occasionally working or they quit for no reason. And then we have several financial eligibility requirements as well. So they have to have at least 2 quarters of wages, earned at least a minimum amount of money during a base period. That minimum amount is $4,200. The base period represents 1 year of the claimant's work and wages, which is 4 calendar quarters. And you'll see that down in that table on the last page of that handout. Wages earned in the base period are used to calculate a claimant's weekly benefit payment. They have to have at least 1.4 times the highest quarter, and that total has to meet or exceed the total wages. If the claimant has earned at least $4,200 in the base period, those wages will be used to calculate the benefit payment. And then lastly, I just wanted to point out that regardless of salary or time at employment, the current Wyoming maximum amount a claimant can receive for a weekly benefit is $560 a week for a maximum of 26 weeks, equaling $14,560 per year. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Director Cooley.
Thank you, Holly. And to get right into the bill itself, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, We wanted to dig into that data for a reason, because we wanted to see what the benefit would be from reducing the weeks of benefits to claimants. But as we started considering this bill, we started considering what we have historically seen and how benefits have been paid across the state in certain scenarios. So what we started thinking about are the scenarios we've seen just in the past 4 years. Within the first 4 months of my taking this job, we had the Black Jewel layoff. And within 24 hours, we had 500 and some people laid off from their job in Gillette. That was unexpected. It was overnight. It was an incredible situation. We had people on the ground there almost immediately, setting up rapid response, setting up assistance and unemployment benefits, we had job fairs for them. We had help with finding reemployment. We had every assistance we could help them with to get reemployed. We had on the ground and helping them. But the recognition is that they are highly skilled, highly paid individuals in our communities. And for them to be able to go out and find a job within 12 weeks is going to be a difficult undertaking. And it also doesn't give us the opportunity within 12 weeks to really provide that reemployment opportunity, whether it's retraining, it's funding for other types of recertifications, what have you, whatever it is that unemployed worker wants to undergo. 12 weeks, 13 weeks is really not sufficient time for us to do that for them. So that was one scenario that really caused us concern with the reduction of benefits. And you also have to realize that unemployment benefits benefit the individual, but they're also economic stabilization programs. That money goes right back into the communities. And of course, we saw that during COVID. That money, that unemployment money, went right back into communities to help us maintain during that time frame. But another scenario that we really considered that caused us some concern was larger scale industry-wide layoffs, like an oil and gas layoff. That's going to be larger scale across a greater swath of our state. Again, those are going to be individuals that are laid off for a greater time period. They're highly skilled, they're highly paid, and they're not going to be able to necessarily walk out and get employment in another area. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take some effort, and that's what we're there for. We have 18 workforce centers around the state. That's what we want to do. That's what our job is. 13 weeks, we're concerned that that's not sufficient time. And to be quite honest with you, and we saw it with the Black Jewel layoff, our concern is that's going to drive people to leave the state, because you're going to have to, these are skilled workers again. They're going to have to pick up, move their families, because they're going to have to move out of state potentially to find employment that fits with their transferable skills. So that was this concern that historically, with our boom and bust economy, really caused us some concern as we thought through the way this might impact our communities in our state. But also that got us to thinking too about the system itself and how we would go about implementing this with our system. And as I indicated, our job is reemployment. And so what we do around the state is any number of activities to reemploy individuals. And if I could, I'd like to ask you to look at the document that's entitled the 2022 Annual Report on the Employment Support Fund. The Employment Support Fund is really a fund, and it's not immediately apparent from the statute that the unemployment fund monies that come in help to fund other things other than benefits out to workers. Part of that money goes to fund some of these reemployment benefits. If you look at page 2 of that document, you look at some of the reemployment efforts around the state that we utilize those employment support funds for. Whether it's administrative services for the unemployment insurance program, because we don't get, we're not fully funded with some of our administrative funds in order to just administer that. It's the Wagner-Pizer program. That's just a basic job program. There's no income eligibility. Anybody can walk in and get some employment help with that, reemployment help, whether it's drafting a resume, it's help with interviews, it's help in our system with Wyoming at Work, what have you. Any person can walk in and get reemployment help through the Wagner-Pizer program. Or it might be our research and planning program, which is our statistical program that works through the labor market information system with the Department of Labor, doing all kinds of employment statistics around the state. Of course, we've got our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is employment services for our adult, youth, and dislocated workers. That's our main program. And we are a very low funded state. So a lot of the programs that we are providing are not fully funded by our Department of Labor federal funds. So the employment support funds make up the difference.
Go ahead,
So
Senator
what is
Hicks.
the source of funds for the workforce development training fund?
The full source of funds for the Workforce Development Training Fund, Madam Chair, Senator Hicks, that is actually a fund that comes off the interest of the state UI Trust Fund.
Okay.
So that's a whole different funding source.
Okay, so where are the source of funds for the programs that
Okay.
you're talking about?
I'll swing right into that. If you want to take a look at the graph here that's entitled Unemployment Insurance Tax, it's the flow chart here. The flow chart is kind of complicated, but it does provide you with a little bit of a visual. It shows the clearing account here, and those are all the funds that come in. And it shows you up the top there where per the statute, there are 3 different factors. Those factors take those funds and they parse them out, and they will take those funds, and that's where those funds will go to. The one that we're most concerned about is in the far corner here, the adjustment factor, where underneath it says non-charged and ineffectively charged. What happens with these non-charged and ineffectively charged, this factor here, is these are benefits that are paid out to claimants that are, for whatever reason, that shouldn't have been charged back to the employer, whether it's because the claimant shouldn't have been paid those benefits because they actually quit their job and they shouldn't have gotten those benefits, or whatever the reason is. This is non-charged, ineffectively charged are those benefits that are taken into account that were charged to the employer that shouldn't have been. So the key here is if you reduce the number of weeks here, you reduce the number of benefits paid out, which necessarily reduces the non-charged, ineffectively charged monies. And you can see from that 40% of that goes into the employment support fund. That's the money that helps to fund the programs that I was just speaking to. What we did there's so many factors, there's so many things that go into making that calculation, but we put a group of people to work on that. The best estimate we could come up with is we looked at the collection over five years. An average is about $5 million per year. We are estimating that for over a biennium, it's going to be between $5 and $8 million that we will lose out of this fund from a reduction from 26 weeks down to 13 weeks from this proposed legislation. So that's what we would need to backfill into that fund to make us whole. Or benefits will be reduced. Some of these reemployment programs will have to be, the services will have to be reduced. And quite frankly, that may mean employment, and some of the employees will have to be let go as well. So
Madam Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
So Director, do you got a suggestion on where you would backfill that?
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, if I would backfill it or where I would backfill it.
Or do you have a suggestion where you might backfill that?
I would ask for general funds. Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, I don't know where else to backfill it from.
Any of the special revenue funds that you have in your budget?
They're, Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, they're pretty much spoken for. We are to the point that, we're only 9% generally funded. The rest are federal funds and other funds. And we are a minimally funded state with those funds, and we are scraping with some of the things that we've got, some of the services we're providing. So we do not have other places to pull from in order to make up that difference.
Any further questions? Senator French? Oh, and then Senator Kolb. First, Senator French.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. But if we go from 26 weeks to 13, that's 13 weeks they're not drawing unemployment benefits, correct?
Madam
So
Chairman,
would that money is that money that's potentially there to backfill?
Madam Chairman, Senator French, unfortunately, no. Money that goes into the UI Trust Fund is not money that can come out for any other purpose. Once it's in the trust fund, it can't be, per Department of Labor regulations, we can't pull it back out to pay for some of these things. It has to go into this fund before it goes anywhere else. That's why you see this on this chart, this flow chart. It goes into this employment support fund before any of these other places.
Senator Kolb.
Guess I'm a little slow and baffled by this adjustment factors situation here. 60% and 40% out, you're losing 20%. What's one question. If you please go through that again, tell me mathematically how this is going on, because I don't understand that. Secondarily, I'd like to ask a question is, you talk about, first off, it's 12 weeks unemployment. It's actually 13 weeks unemployment, it's not 12. And isn't unextended benefits available to people? I mean, that was a question because I would add up to 19 and a half weeks.
All right, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Senator Kolb, first, the extended benefits. That's a program that is only captured, it's only actually tapped under very certain circumstances, and it's only very rarely tapped, and Department of Labor has to identify when it is. Now, it was tapped during COVID for a short time, and I would ask our UI administrator to talk about maybe it was tapped during the Great Recession, perhaps, but that's a special set-aside program that's not, that we can't tap into that. So I can have her explain that a little bit further if you'd like.
Follow up.
All right, go ahead.
And the other question was, I thought you testified that the average time for unemployment was 14 weeks. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Senator Kolb, the average time is 14 weeks. That's correct. 14.7.
Okay. I'm a
Right.
math
I
guy.
believe,
Thank you.
right?
Yes, correct. All right, anything else?
Not
Anything else?
not for the
All
moment.
right. Anything else, committee? All right. Anything else, department, that you'd like to close with?
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, yes, one other issue that we saw with it is the implementation date does cause us some problems. July 1, we ask our IT team, this is a really difficult, complex program, as I think, I hope I didn't chop it up too bad in trying to explain this, but it's a difficult program, and our IT our IT team did indicate that they would need additional time in order to program it. We want to have time to train it both test it both pre and post testing to make sure this is something that this is something that has to be correct when it's rolled out. And it has to be tested as it is rolled out as well. We also need to train staff, and we also need to communicate to the public about it. So we would ask for a November 1 effective date, if that would be possible.
All right. We have made a notation, so thank you, ladies. Hang
Madam
around.
Chairman.
Oh, go ahead, Senator Higgs.
So you also have on your fiscal note there that it's going to cost about $18,000 for your, I believe this is your 900 series for that consultant position. Is that correct? And then do you have sufficient funds in your 900 series to pay for am I reading that right?
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, yes, it is closer to that 18,000 that we need to implement that. And we do have a vendor that we utilize that does all our programming in our YUI system. And I would need to check with my fiscal department to see if we have funds allocated and available to do that, or if we would need an exception for that.
So you don't know at this time whether we'd need to make an appropriation to cover the cost of that or not?
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, I do believe we would need an appropriation for that, yes.
And then a couple of questions that I've got, if I may, Madam Chairman.
All right.
So what happens if we implement? Well, the first question is so we're looking at reducing it to 13. So why is 26 the right number for the number of weeks for unemployment insurance? Why is that right? 13 may be wrong.
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks.
Well, and I want to caveat that, especially with with your experience, with number of weeks paid out and all of that stuff. So that would be the first question, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, we did look at a nationwide, take a look at all of the states in our nation and where they were sitting. Most of the states are at 26 weeks. There are 10 states that have a different number of weeks. Some are over and some are under. When we took a look at those states that are over, Montana provides 28 and Massachusetts provides 30 weeks. 10 states that do less than 26 weeks, Michigan, South Carolina, Missouri, Idaho have 20 weeks. Arkansas, Kansas, Iowa has 16. Alabama has 14. Florida and North Carolina, 12. And when we took a look at those that had the lower numbers, 12, 14, 16 weeks, those states were concerned about their trust fund solvency, and they reduced those weeks so that there were less benefits being paid out at the time. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it does. But on the Montana numbers, I think they just changed theirs. And that was one of the reasons that I think that the genesis of this bill, because the minute that they changed their unemployment, they saw 40,000 jobs filled that were previously unfilled. And so if you could check on that, and I believe it was Montana, just as recently changed this, and what we saw was 40,000 people went to work, and those numbers, I'm drawing from recollection. But when we saw that to our neighboring state change this, but the question comes back then is so, and I think all of us, we're really not interested in what Massachusetts and California do. You guys know that. So it's not even a comparable number, within the region, and particularly states that have similar economies like North Dakota and Alaska, and maybe some of the other mineral producing states would be even more valuable data than nationwide statistics. But what I want to do is say, if we implement this, Director, what's the fallout association with the adjustment factor, and then how does that play out with the employment support fund? You said just to backfill it to keep it whole would be $8 million. What happens if we don't do the $8 million to that fund? What happens under that scenario? I want to understand the consequences if we move forward with this. So we're well informed and understand what we're doing here. So can you explain that?
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, implementation of this would reduce the amount in the employment support funds, which reduces the amount that we have to pay for some of the services that you see in this document. Those services would have to be cut back, and potentially the number of staff we have to provide those services would have to be cut back. If those aren't if we don't have some money backfilled in there to be able to continue to provide those same level of services. And I cannot stress enough how much we rely on that employment support fund to be able to fill the gaps that we just simply don't have funding for right now.
So just to follow up on that, we've got more jobs available. I think the last number I saw was there's 8 jobs available for every one person on unemployment insurance today, or within the last few months. Question is if we have such low levels of unemployment, what's the utilization right now of the employment support fund? It's obviously like not COVID, and it's obviously not when the Black Jewel laid off. What's the number of participants that you're servicing through that employment support fund now versus your historic levels? And have you compared that with what our current unemployment rates are? So do you understand the nature of what I'm trying to get at? So if we have a 7 or 8% unemployment rate, I would expect there would be a lot of utilization of the employment support fund. When we're at 3% unemployment, I would assume that the number of people that were being served by that program would be significantly less.
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, what I do have is the number of participants served that are in this report along the far column there. I don't have historical numbers of those, and we can try to pull those. What I am comfortable telling you is that our numbers that we're serving have not gone down. The numbers that we're serving in all of our workforce centers are the same or increasing compared to what we have served in the past. So we're not seeing reductions in numbers by any stretch.
Madam Chairman.
Just 1 minute. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Is this chart you're talking about? So when you're talking about numbers served, it's the participants served in the this column here. Okay, so just so everybody's tracking and we know what we're talking about, it's this chart right here. So the other thing that I would ask you before we get back to that with regard to this chart, are any of these people double counted in that line? Could they be doing the workforce innovation and the trade adjustment allowance and the vocational rehabilitation? Could any of those be a double number, or are they all separate? Does that make any sense?
Madam Chairman, that does make sense. And I am trying to see how that double counting would work. Holly, do you have thoughts on that?
Madam Chairman, I do believe that a person could be in a Wagner-Pizer service, which is just basic job-seeking skills, and then also receiving intensive WIOA. And on occasion, we do have WIOA participants that are also vocational rehabilitation clients.
Okay.
That's the only place I see that they would overlap just a bit. And we could drill that down farther if you'd like us to.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, I lost my train of thought. But
Sorry about that.
Where I think I was headed was, Madam Chairman, and so Director, here's what I'm trying to understand is we're at the low bottom as far as unemployment, but you said the number of participants hasn't changed from when we were at much higher rates of unemployment. Is there a certain number of people that are just unemployable that are involved in the program?
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, the workforce dynamic has changed. And what you're seeing is unemployment numbers that are low, But what you're not recognizing are the number of individuals out in the work, not just out there, that have dropped out of the workforce. Those are the individuals that are not being counted in those numbers. Those aren't in unemployment numbers because they're not actively seeking employment. And there are any number of individuals that are counted in those individuals that are not actively seeking employment, whether it's retirement, it's staying home with kids, it's staying home because of health reasons or what have you. But that in itself, I think, accounts for a lot of what you're seeing, the dynamic that you're seeing here.
And Madam Chairman, I think that's spot on, but all I know is I have every employer in my area in Carbon County cannot find people to go to work. Cannot. A warm body. That's all they want, is a warm body, and we can't find warm bodies to go to work. And yet 26 weeks, 6 months is pretty hard pill when you've got a number of people. And so that's what we're trying to get to. How do we push people back into the workforce? And this may be a blunt instrument, but I'm all ears if you got a better idea. But we got to get people off the couch and back onto the workforce.
Madam Chairman.
Even just the warm body ones.
I
Madam
think
Chair.
he means, wouldn't you agree? Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, as I said, that's the question I hear. I absolutely agree with you. I drive down Main Street, Wyoming, and see hiring signs everywhere. I hear you, and we are doing everything we can to try to get those people into jobs. But I do not believe myself, based on the data that I've seen, that they are individuals that are on unemployment, that are not actively seeking employment, that are the issue. And so the way I look at this is taking an issue that's going to affect a small number of people, and it'll get them out into the workforce and it'll push them out there. But it's going to affect, on the other end, a large group of people that we're trying to reemploy, an even larger group of people that we're trying to reemploy. So on the back end, the effect there is going to be much larger with the programs that we're trying to work to help them upskill or get into better jobs or reemploy. So the dynamic and the balance there, I think, is out of balance. And if I might make one more comment too, as it relates to the health of the trust fund, that's an excellent point, Senator Kolb, that you made. But this isn't the answer to the health of the trust fund. This won't bring down the amounts in the trust fund. Now, we've had discussions in our office, and this calculation, this statutory scheme, was developed quite a while ago, and it was developed when we had a different dynamic in the workplace and a different dynamic in our state, period, in the economy. Maybe it is time to take a look at it, but there might be other ways to look at it a little more closely, to look at it a little more with a finer tooth comb, to develop some ways that are better thought through, to identify this and to work on those very same issues. And we're happy to do that. So.
All right. Thank you, Director. Senator Kolb.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so to be real clear, I mean, when I was first trying to understand your documents and your information, right, I've come to the realization that obviously that fund, it's not going to change. It is what it is. It's inviolate in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I don't pretend that this will bring the fund down. I don't think that at all. But I think sometimes our best intentions, when we're trying to help folks, can actually be a hindrance. Frankly, I think sometimes, I'll make a joke that I really don't know when the government does things that super benefit private industry. I know you try, and there's good intentions. I don't mean to take anything away from what you've attempted to do. But I'm just saying, as the way industry goes, government's usually not there to help us sometimes. And I think this might be, this is an attempt to try to rectify the situation. And I will tell you that if it goes south, I'll be the first one to try to rectify said situation. But sitting on our hands and doing what we've done pretty well is going to mean we're going to continue to do that, right? So this is an attempt to help the situation out. And that's all it is. I thank you again, though.
All right, thank you, Senator Kolb. Senator Hicks, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, just Director Cooley, if 13 is not the right number, you haven't convinced me that 26 is either. So where would you like to do a little experimentation?
Go ahead, Director. That might be a loaded question, and you should have had the cosmetologist on your side.
Madam Chairman, Senator Hicks, I would love to have our data people take a dive into that and get back to you with where they think that sweet spot is.
How many days? Because, you know, these bills have to be out of committee of the whole by Monday.
I would hope to get it maybe to you by tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Director, yes, and Senator Hicks, you need to have these bills out by Friday, so, yeah,
Well,
out of committee.
yeah, Madam Chairman, what I was thinking is because I do want data-driven decisions based on, you know, best input. So we can pass the bill out and then wait for the data from the department and certainly amend that on the floor when we get that, so. But that's my inclination, Madam Chairman, if we can get that data in that time frame.
All right, any other questions from the director or her office tonight from the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will entertain that idea. Is there any public comments on this bill? Any public comment in the room or online? Seeing none, committee, what is your pleasure on the bill?
Move the bill.
Moved by Cole, seconded by Ide. Are there any amendments on the bill?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to change the effective date. I'm making a motion to amend for page 4, line 17, and change the effective date to November 1 of 2023.
All right, moved by Kolb, seconded by Hicks. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion has been adopted.
Madam Chairman,
Go ahead, Senator Hicks.
I'd like to make an additional motion that we include a general fund appropriation
Okay,
for, I believe it's $18,000.
all right. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Discussion? Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's a small amount, but why do we need to make that appropriation? I don't understand that.
Senator Hicks, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, when we're incurring another cost above and beyond the agency that hasn't gone through the normal budget process, this is a legislative driven thing that we're saying, we're gonna make you go do this. And it wasn't in their budget. It wasn't brought, wasn't discussed or vetted. So it's pretty customary that when we tell them you're gonna go do something, I don't think anybody likes to be told to go do a job and then doesn't have the money to do it. So that's why, and it's not a big appropriation, but that's the rationale.
All right. Did we have a second on that?
I seconded.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We've had some discussion. Any more?
Amendments?
No, any more discussion on the amendment to add the appropriation of $18,000? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, okay, so that motion has been adopted. Linda, did you get all those amendments?
Yes, Madam Chairman, on the last, the general fund appropriation, where does that go in the bill?
We'll bring in.
At the end of it, or?
It'll
Yep,
have to be a new
yep.
section. in the bill.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I think staff will figure that out for us. Thank you for asking. All right. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Discussion on the bill, seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Hicks,
Aye.
Senator Ide, Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Aye.
Madam Chairman, that's 5 ayes.
5 ayes, so the bill has passed committee. And Senator Kolb will carry that on the floor. We'll also await information from the agency and make an amendment on the floor if we need to. And so thank you for your input tonight and for the late hour